The classroom environment sets the tone for everything else a teacher does. Can a great teacher overcome a bad environment? Of course. Can a bad teacher nullify a great environment? Also, yes. But the classroom environment is really the first impression a student has of a class, and that impression may be made every single time the student steps into the classroom. So, with that in mind, I'm going to take you through a look at my current classroom, the changes I make on a regular basis, and a potential change I'd like to make in the future of Mr. James Burnfin's classroom. So my current classroom layout, these are the nuts and bolts. I have 8 quad tables, 6 whiteboards that are mainly used for Avid tutorials, college pennants, speaker cutouts, and lots of table movement. So this is a usual look of my classroom. Like I said, the 4 quad tables here. I like to do a lot of small group with 4 student groups most of the time. So this is my usual layout, but this changes on a week to week basis based on what I'm doing in either my speech class or my Avid class. So for example, I do a lot of small group work, like I said, but I also do debates in my speech class. In debates, I change the layout of my room. I'll show you that in a second. Formal speeches in my speech class where individuals go up and give an individual formal speech to the rest of the class. I also put it into a different layout for that. Tutorials, that's my Avid classes. That's a core tenet at Avid elective classes where students get into essentially study groups. They bring in outside work from their other core classes and they go over it together. And it has a process and a step-by-step process they have to complete throughout the way. With tutorials, that requires a certain setup as well. And then I put Socratic seminars and others as well of different types of things I do in my class often. So this will give you a look at what a debate layout kind of looks like. So as you can see here, it's similar to my other one. Doors over here, here's my desk, whiteboard, and a smartboard here in the middle. But the big change is I have the jury back here and extended desks to the left here if needed. And then I have the debate teams. Sometimes they're teams of 4, depending on the class size, and sometimes all the way up to teams of 7, and every once in a while teams of 8. Uh, so they'll sit here, the pros will sit here, the cons will sit here, and then they'll just go through the process of debates, and they'll come up to these 2 podiums, speak to the jury. The jurors here obviously will then decide the fate of those debates. My students really do like this layout. Every time I do it in the first debate of the semester, they come in and like, oh, whoa, what's this? That's really cool. It does get them a little bit of engagement, a little bit of buy-in. I would love to go further with this with a full-on transformation going forward. My wife in her 6th grade classroom does a lot of transformations with butcher paper and small like centerpieces for full-on classroom transformations, making your classroom look like the environment they're studying, whether it's Egypt or the jungle or race car pit. Here's a layout, pretty basic layout, which you might find in traditional classrooms. This is what I use for formal speeches by individual students. I like this. One, it provides everybody their own workspace because they have to provide individual feedback to each speaker. But it also mimics what you might find in most formal speaking engagements. When you go give a speech in front of the school board or in front of a school, everybody's going to be facing you. So instead of the small groups where they're all facing each other, I like to put them into these rows so that they're facing the speaker. It mimics that uncomfortableness you might find in other environments. This is the Avid tutorials I was talking about. For Avid tutorials, we're looking at groups of smaller than 7, and they each need their own whiteboard because a student presenter will go up and present their what we call question of confusion, and so or point of confusion, and in those groups they'll go on the whiteboard and they'll write the point of confusion, their notes, and what steps they have taken to figure out what they're confused about. Then everybody else in the group will need to work with them to figure that out. So that's why the desks get moved into these little horseshoe patterns in front of whiteboards. That's why I have so many whiteboards. A lot of these whiteboards are blank most of the time, except for this one back here. I do use as essential questions and for my weekly agenda. Everything else is usually blank because that I need them blank for average tutorials. We do that 2 times a week, especially later on to the semester. I also have 2 mobile whiteboards that I would like to use going forward. That way I can utilize some of this whiteboard space for hanging student work or anything else, tracking student progress, stuff like that. That way they're not just wasted space. So potential layouts, flexible seating is something that I've definitely looked into, and I think it's something that could be extremely helpful, especially in the video we watched this week, making space for personalized learning. The thing that really stood out to me was the tables on wheels. That's something I really wish I had in my classroom because it just made it so easy for them to transition into different activities. You can also see here they have small group right here in the middle and the individual work on the outside. That's something I would really like to do going forward, where I can give the students some more options, such as if you would like to do a quick write on this question, or if you would like to do a think, pair, share, or small group work, giving kids options on that sort of things. Not every day, but on certain activities, really seems like it would be beneficial for my students. So that's made especially easier with wheeled tables. Right now, I just have tables that the kids have to carry, and of course, being freshmen, they just try to drag them across the room most of the time. And I'm pretty sure my downstairs neighbor teacher is not very happy with that. Some pros and cons of flexible seating. They're, like I said, transitionable, student choice, get some student buy-in. It's comfortable for the students and it's welcoming. You can walk in, it's welcoming for them. Cons list, student distractions, assigned seating more difficult, and trouble grouping. As a teacher, you would tend to help the groups who usually require the most help on a usual basis. So you might join their group, but then you might lose track of the group of students who decide to do individual work. And they may not receive feedback that day as a result. But that's the pros and cons list, and that's what I'm hoping to achieve going forward. And thank you for listening to my presentation.